The rain poured relentlessly over the small town of Oak Ridge, turning the courthouse steps into rivers of mud. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered over tired faces and the dull hum of whispers. But at the center of it all stood Ethan Cole, a man who had once commanded respect on battlefields far from home, now standing in handcuffs, his wrists bruised, his dignity hanging by a thread. He was a single father, a decorated Delta Force veteran who had given everything to his country. Yet that morning, he was treated like a criminal. Two officers chuckled as they tightened the cuffs around his wrists. "Guess the hero's medal doesn't work in court, huh?" One sneered. Ethan said nothing. He stood tall, his weathered face unreadable, his deep blue eyes fixed on the courtroom doors. What the world saw was a man accused of assault and resisting arrest, but what they didn't see was a father fighting for the only thing that mattered, his son. His little boy, Noah, sat quietly on a wooden bench nearby, clutching a worn-out backpack that still smelled faintly of gun oil, the same backpack Ethan had carried through 3 tours overseas. The boy was only 9, but his eyes carried the same quiet resilience as his father's. The courtroom buzzed with gossip. Reporters whispered. The prosecutor, a sharp-tongued man named Robert Kane, flipped through his notes with a smug grin. "Your Honor," he began, "this so-called hero attacked 2 officers when they were responding to a domestic disturbance. He's unstable, violent, and unfit to raise a child." Ethan's attorney, a young woman named Claire Matthews, rose from her seat, her voice steady but edged with frustration. "That's a lie. Ethan didn't attack anyone. He was protecting his son from an unlawful arrest." The judge, Margaret Holloway, sighed heavily. "Let's proceed with evidence." As the trial unfolded, the story came out piece by piece. Ethan had been at his home 2 weeks earlier when child services arrived unexpectedly. Someone had reported that Noah was being neglected. In truth, Ethan had been late on bills, working double shifts at the auto shop, and Noah had shown up to school with torn shoes. It wasn't neglect, it was poverty. But when the social worker demanded to take Noah away, pending review, Ethan had refused. 2 officers were called, and when they tried to drag Noah out of his arms, Ethan had reacted, instinctively, like a soldier in defense of his own. A struggle ensued, and within minutes, he was pinned, handcuffed, and branded a danger to society. Now, 2 weeks later, the man who had once saved hostages in war zones was fighting for the right to tuck his son into bed. Claire leaned toward Ethan, whispering, "They're twisting everything. But hold your ground. The truth will come." Ethan nodded slowly. He'd been through worse. But as he looked at Noah, his trembling hands, the fear in his eyes, a knot formed in his chest. This wasn't a battlefield. This was worse. The prosecutor called one of the officers to the stand, Officer Darrell Green. He smirked as he described Ethan as belligerent and dangerous. His tone carried the arrogance of someone certain the system was on his side. Claire cross-examined, asking, "Did you or your partner sustain any injuries?" "None worth mentioning." "Did Mr. Cole strike first?" "He resisted." "Did you see a weapon?" "No." "Then why, Officer Green," she pressed, "did you draw your gun?" The officer hesitated, caught off guard. "Procedure." A murmur spread through the courtroom. Claire continued, "You drew your gun on an unarmed veteran, in his own home, while he was holding his child." The officer's jaw clenched. The judge banged her gavel for order, but the crowd had already begun whispering. For the first time, Ethan saw a crack in their narrative, a flicker of doubt. Still, the case seemed hopeless. The prosecutor called witnesses from child services, each describing Ethan as unstable and emotionally distant. They mentioned his PTSD, his therapy sessions, and his nightmares. When the judge asked if Ethan had anything to say, the courtroom fell silent. He stood slowly, his voice low but steady. "Your Honor, I've done things in war I'll never be proud of. But every day since I came home, I've tried to be a good father. My son is the only thing that keeps me breathing. I didn't fight those officers to defy the law, I fought because I was scared. Scared that the system would take him away, like it took everything else." He turned to Noah. "I may not have much, but I'll give that boy everything I've got left." Tears welled up in Claire's eyes. Even the judge seemed to hesitate. And then, the courtroom doors opened. A tall man in uniform walked in, his medals glinting under the harsh lights. The air changed instantly. Every soldier in the room straightened by instinct. The bailiff froze. "Who is that?" whispered a reporter. "Four-star General Nathan Briggs," someone replied. "Chairman of the Joint Chiefs." The general walked up to the bench. "Your Honor," he said, his voice commanding, "I am here to testify on behalf of Sergeant Ethan Cole." The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Holloway blinked in shock. "General Briggs, are you aware?" "I'm fully aware," he interrupted. "Ethan Cole saved my unit in Kuna Province. He carried 2 wounded men through sniper fire. And when the enemy closed in, he refused evacuation until every civilian in the area was safe. That man is a hero. He doesn't deserve to be in chains." Robert Kane stood abruptly. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant military history." The general turned toward him sharply. "Irrelevant? You question the character of a man who risked his life for others while you sit safe behind a desk." The prosecutor stammered, but the general continued, "You think a man like Ethan Cole would ever harm his child? I've seen him in war. He'd die before letting anyone hurt someone innocent." The judge called for order again, but even she couldn't hide her emotion. The general stepped closer to the stand. "I also have statements from 4 commanding officers and 3 psychologists from the VA. They all confirm Sergeant Cole's stability, his dedication as a father, and his ongoing recovery from trauma, which, might I remind the court, he earned serving this country." He turned toward Ethan. "You've carried burdens most can't imagine. You don't owe anyone shame." The general then faced the judge once more. "Your Honor, I recommend that all charges be dropped immediately, and that custody of Noah Cole remain with his father, where it belongs." The room erupted in whispers. The officers who had mocked Ethan earlier looked down, their faces pale. The prosecutor shuffled his papers, defeated. Judge Holloway wiped her glasses and spoke quietly. "This court will take a short recess." When she returned, her tone had changed. "Sergeant Cole," she began, "this court owes you an apology. The charges against you are dismissed. Custody of your son is fully reinstated." Noah leapt from the bench and ran to his father, throwing his arms around him. Ethan sank to his knees, holding the boy tight as tears finally broke free, tears he'd buried for years. The judge continued softly, "You've served this country with honor, and today, we honor that service." When Ethan turned to thank the general, the older man simply saluted. "No thanks needed, son. Just take care of that boy." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. But Ethan didn't care. He walked down the steps with Noah's hand in his, the rain washing away the dirt and shame that had clung to him for weeks. Claire caught up to him. "You did it," she said, smiling. "No," Ethan replied quietly. "We did it. All of us." He looked at Noah and added, "And from now on, I fight for him, not as a soldier, but as his dad." That night, back home, Ethan tucked Noah into bed. The house was still small, the bills still stacked high, but it finally felt like home again. As he turned off the light, Noah whispered, "Dad." "Yeah, buddy. Are you still a hero?" Ethan smiled faintly. "No, son. I'm just your dad." But in that quiet, humble moment, both knew the truth, that being a father took more courage than any war ever could. And somewhere far away, in the halls of the Pentagon, a 4-star general signed a letter, a formal commendation, restoring Ethan's honor and ensuring his record would forever read, "Sergeant Ethan Cole, defender of the innocent." The system had tried to break him, but love, and truth, had won. And for the first time in years, Ethan Cole slept without nightmares. Because he had finally come home.